Hi girls, I am live again. Thank you for bearing with me. I had some family stuff to do. We will see if I get anybody on. I know we all have lives. So I'm gonna light a candle. I'm going to start I want to really dive more into my day and do more. I like adding more touches into what my plans are today. Make sure you say hi when you do come in. Thanks for being with me. Had some family issues. Let's get real. It was Blaine. So I had some things to love up on him with. So, hey, thanks for coming back. Maybe this is even the first time. Hi, Amber. Is this Amber Edwards? Or is this another Amber? Hey, thanks for coming back, you guys. Thanks for popping in. I hope you guys are going to be having an amazing Saturday today. I plan on baking. I'm going to get all caught up on all of my laundry, which I do pretty good each weekend in particular. A lot of times that's when I do my laundry. Oh, Amber Corley, I'm so glad you're here. And this is when I do all my videos for the following week. So I've got lots to do and I'm excited about it. I'm also going to be doing a video on gut health and what I have found. So be staying tuned for that. It's only going to be what I have learned and what I've come to know, and having 8 kids and the effects of antibiotics and children. So stay tuned for that, because I've really have gotten some really enlightened experiences through what I've come to find out. So, and through children's behavior, I just have had a lot of dots connecting on gut health in children and things like that. So what else do we have for me? I'm excited. I just got my kamut flour. And I know the Food Nanny. Everyone's been talking about the Food Nanny. I have heard of the Food Nanny. I adore them. I've never tried any of their recipes. I have, so I plan on getting over there and seeing what they got for me, because they're kind of like kamut experts, aren't they? So I'm kind of excited. I really want to work with some more flours and ease my family into that. So einkorn flour I have worked with, which is an ancient grain. It's not easy to work with per se. Hey, Tammy. And so like you can't convert it like you can. I hear you can do that with kamut, but with einkorn you just can't. It is just a whole different ball game. And so like I used einkorn instead of all purpose in my bread, and it was like this high. So it's definitely, so when I got back onto the einkorn site, I mean, it's a lot different. Dang, that's blinding me, that light. So yeah, I'm excited to learn all about it. I'm also wanting to start a sourdough starter, so lots of fun things I want to do. And so yeah, definitely going to be doing some of that stuff and taking you with me, as well as some other really yummy whole food plant-based meals. If you guys followed me on IG, I also have been doing these pancakes that are the oats and banana. Well, I also have done it where I just use water and I used oat flour, and just as phenomenal, and you're not doing any kind of fat from the cashew milk, which is still minimal, but you know, just trying to stay as whole and unprocessed as you can. And yeah, it tasted so good. So man, so I've got a lot of other yummy foods I'm going to be cooking through. Forks over Knives, their magazine. You can always pick it up at any grocery store. Actually, no, that's not true. It's more like Whole Foods is where I find this. Maybe Target. But they have some delicious farro fried rice, okay? What other amazing things? So many sauces, spring roll bowls, stuff like that. So I'm excited to try some of these things. So I am back to, now that I've done some of my raw foods, now I'm going back to the starch solution. If I get questions on that sometimes. So I'm doing the starch solution, and it's been working really, really well. So any questions on your journaling and your planning? How is it working for you? I really want to use this time so that I can answer questions. That would be so great. Hi, Chris. I know you were with me before. Welcome back. So yeah, if you have any questions, are you stumped on any part of the planning process or the journaling process? I mean, you should be flying through these with just ideas and vigor. Someone said too, this was a good one. She asked, she's kind of a control freak. I think we all can relate to that, where you are writing down your day and you're doing stuff like that that will take months to do, okay? Everything is totally fine with Blaine. I'm going to explain a little bit about Blaine here in a minute. Thank you, Amy, for asking. She had asked, like, when you do go about writing your desires and you're scripting those out, how do you know it's God talking to you as a lead, or if it's your own mind? It's a really, really good question. And I feel like the difference is that whenever we use our minds and they get activated and they start, because your mind is it wants to fix things and it wants to figure things out. And there's nothing wrong with that. It works, and it's going to work for you in a lot of ways. But it can also work against you, because your mind can only produce so many answers for you, because God can do so much more than your mind will ever do. And so the way I combat that urge is to really stay in quiet zone quite a few times, staying conscious as much as I can, so that way I don't work on subconscious programming so much. And when I feel like an urge to do something, or like if I feel like, I really feel like doing this, or I really feel like doing that, even if it's unrelated, I'll follow it, because then that's God's leading. It's more of a, wow, I really feel like doing this, or I really feel like doing that. It feels a lot different than a mind thing. You're just gonna have to test it out. A lot of times with the mind, it'll sometimes you might hit like a dead end, things of that nature. So it's always good to just quiet the mind, and ideas will come to you, and that's definitely a God lead. And then ask God to give you leads. Ask God to give you leads. I mean, it's like, okay, this is what's going on. I need a God lead. Okay, now Forrest, I think that was you who asked about how do you plan big projects? Well, I love it depending on how large it is. So number one, if you've got a big desire and you don't know at all where to begin. So let's say I'd have to say for me, one of the biggest things for me that I can say is it'd be my business, quite frankly. Yes, Marcel, thanks. Welcome back, girl. It is definitely, for me, I'd have to say my business in general. I had a really big idea. I wrote it in my journal. And all I know is that, and this is when I was in my Etsy days, and all I know is that I wanted to do what I'm doing now. And even now I have bigger plans and bigger ideas. But at that time I was painting everything by hand, and I could only take so many people. I had people on wait lists, and I would draw and paint the calendars on the inside, and I would do tip-ins and everything all by hand, and then I would ship it out. I had a ton of kids at home at that time, and that's when I would actually have sleeping babies wrapped on me, all that kind of stuff, and I would still paint and do. And it was thriving. My Etsy business was thriving. And I knew, though, I had an idea and I had a goal that I wanted to, I don't even think, I don't know if anyone's ever heard of Planner Society. Is her name Christy? Correct me if I'm wrong. But she's kind of big in the planner community. But it was really funny. She saw my IG account back in the day, and I started to, that's when I was painting on these TN covers or these insert covers. And she said, I really hope you take this and you make it, make it big one day. And just her words alone was like, you know what, why not? And I'd have to say, it was her that really kind of gave me that nudge to start. Actually, she was the nudge to get me started in my Etsy days. So that's when I was like, you know what? I'm just going to open up an Etsy shop and paint for people. She's, I hope you do this for other people and make a business out of it. And I did. Okay, so she was one who kind of gave me that nudge. And I was like, wow, how cool. So I just like, I'm going to do it. What do I got to lose? So I did it, and it hit it. I mean, it was awesome. I had a wait list, and I just couldn't keep up with anymore with the demand. And I thought, well, okay, this is going to be huge. I had so much confidence. I've said this before. Sometimes we can have no mental blocks. The way to achieve answered prayer is by removing your own blocks. That's it. That's it. I mean, if you think about it, it's so simple. It's like the only thing that's in our way is ourselves. And I know that almost sounds cliche, but that is all that it is. It's ourselves, because everything is already, we can have all those things that we're desiring. If something takes really long time, most of the time it's our own roadblocks. But again, that's part of our spiritual journey. And oh, God bless you. Thank you. And but when it comes to money, business, I have minimal blocks. I'd have to say that of all the things, I have a lot of different issues that I've had to overcome with the family I grew up in. I've told you that, and I've mentioned that and divulged a lot of that in my shadow work video. But one thing my parents did do, I feel really well, is that they they didn't have money per se. Like, what do you think? Money grows on trees? My parents were basically like, and we weren't even had a lot of money. It's just that any money that we had, my mom always kept it in circulation. She was never like, well, we gotta hunker down. It's time to like save all of our pennies. My mom was not like that. She was like, just, spend, give out, receive, flow, receive. It was a circular. I never once heard out of my mom's mouth that we were in hard, trying times. I mean, and my dad has gone through bankruptcy several times, even in his own business, and we never slowed down. I mean, I think my dad bought things during that time. I mean, it was like, so it was an observance of mine, mind you. And so I don't have any conditioning where I feel like what I want, I can't have. I tried to figure this out for so long, and that's it. Because my parents truly were always like, growing up, and my dad ended up really being very successful. He's a builder in his business. And so, but no matter what, if it was a hard time or not, both him and my mom never had a thing about money that it should be held on too tight. Never. It was always flowing, always. And there was never a mention of holding on to anything tight. They just were always like, hey, and my mom would give me a check actually, and she'd say, hey, run to the store. And then she'd never ask how much I spent. It was, you must be checking online, I guess, but here you go. It just was a more free feel, not that, but she also taught me how to check checks and balances. She also taught me that. But anyway, my point is, when it comes to business and money and financials, for me, I just have no blocks about it. I'm just like, I have an idea. I'm going to grow a business. I don't know how it's going to happen. It will. Money will flow in for me and my family, and we will give and it will come, and we will give and it will come. And I just don't have blocks in that arena. Now, when it comes to other arenas, I had huge blocks. So you'll see that a lot of times that's part of your journey, though, is also finding out what those are so that you can remove those blocks so that you can be all that God's created you to be, because every part of you is a seed that has a divine plan in it. And so your journey is really to discover what those blocks are, remove them, and that way you can be free. And that way you can have all the abundance that God does have for you. And that is doing work that seems like play. doing what you're called to do, and removing blocks so that you can receive all that God has for you. So in certain areas, it's really easy for me. So to continue on with my business, I just knew I closed up my Etsy shop and I said, well, girls, my smaller community, definitely smaller than what it is now, my small community that I had at the time, I said, on all my platforms, I think on IG I had, I don't know, 100 followers. I was like, but everywhere I was like, no matter where, what didn't matter to me. I didn't care how big or small it was. I was going to be as big as I wanted to be. And I said, I want to teach women how to plan, and I'm closing down my Etsy shop and I'm going to get these printed. And isn't that great? I tell my I don't know if anyone was with me in those days. I think Periscope, I announced it a lot because I was on Periscope pretty big. And I just said, look for me in the summer. I'll have a website. I had all these plans, but I didn't have any idea how I would ever execute that. My husband, we owned a lawn business at the time. Absolutely, for sure. And he wasn't going to be able to help me. I mean, here I am, mom of a billion, and I was going to open up this business, and I had really no help. I just didn't know how I was going to do it, but I just knew I was going to do it, and I announced it. And sure enough, everything just fell into place, even though two different larger printing companies slammed the door in my face. And they said to me, and I quote, I don't know how anybody would be buying these. We can't be a part of this business. That was it. Seriously. And they were like, I really don't want, I want to break this to you kind of easy. I don't even know how you even sold these on Etsy. They said that to me. Looking back, I don't know why I didn't cry. I just was like, listen, it just didn't get me down. I just was like, well, this is silly. Obviously, I have to do these by myself and produce these from my home. And that's what and I don't know what happened, but my husband started to take interest, and that's odd. Okay. He's busy. He was already busy. And he said, well, what happened at the printing company? And I told him different printing companies that had turned me down. And he said, well, why don't we just sew them ourselves and print them from home? Like, okay, well, how do we sew these? And so my husband got involved. Now, the thing that's one of the many things that is amazing about my husband is that he figures things out. He's a figure outer. And, I don't know her story, Marcel. Now I have to look it up. And he goes, well, let's do it. And so that's one of the great things about, I'm really good at ideas. And then my husband is like, he's like a Google mastermind. I mean, and then out of all the things that you can do, he's able to narrow it down in a really relatively quick amount of time. He's just one of those guys. I'm very fortunate. But it doesn't matter, because if it wasn't him, it would have just been someone else, because I had already put out my prayers to God that that's what my desire was. And I had nothing holding me back from it, or my reservoir was free of any kind of blockage. It was just, I knew it was going to happen. I just was waiting to see where that was going to lead me. And so my husband happened to be the one. And the timing was impeccable. I'm telling you my story, I guess. And I should put this on a YouTube other video, because it really is a fascinating story on just a recorded video. But so my husband got involved. We ended up hiring women to work for us in our basement. Okay. And though that was hard, it was hard because women were coming in at 7 a.m. And, I'm juggling babies, nursing, and then going live in my closet in my bedroom. So women were in my basement, like on this really high-powered machine. I was painting, and then they would reproduce them from me in my basement, and we would produce them. And it was several women, and they had it was getting to be larger and larger, and it was getting tougher and tougher to do. And then what happened is we ended up then moving to this home. And so even though the house was larger, it was hard to have women out working out of your home with such a large family. It was very hard, but that wasn't so much it. I was very grateful for all of it. I just knew that it would flow in the way it should flow. And they ended up having to leave. One was moving, One was like, you know what, I'd be with my older daughter who's having a baby. I don't think I can work here anymore. And I didn't even have a chance to be nervous about it, because then I was like, I didn't even have a chance to say, oh my gosh, because without them, the business would have halted, completely halted. Um, and my husband, even though he had been talking to me about this, but we were deciding to sell Penton Enterprises. And we had been talking about it. And he goes, and once I told him, I said, you know what, the girls, they can't work for us anymore. He goes, no problem. I'll step in, because of the sale, and they left and he came in at like seamless. It was like, bam, bam. And so then they were there, and it was, and then it was just, then what we did is then you know, we have a printing company, we have other companies that work for us now. So it's just one of those things where he came in at the perfect time, and then as time unfolded, he could not do it all. And so that's when and that helped us grow even higher. And so we were able to, yeah, I'm not thinking of the right words to articulate it, but we were able to, oh, whatevs, you get what I'm saying. It's where we gave a lot of portions of our business out. So we subbed it out to other businesses that help us thrive and be able to produce what we need to produce. So that was, but what my point is that everything fell into place. Everything was working out for me tremendously. I had blips, but they were definitely learning experiences for me. Seriously, I didn't know that. Wow. It's to never give up is definitely on your dream, is definitely for sure. My mom even at one time had told me, I started crying one year in the early beginnings of Planner Perfect. I was blogging and I was creating my own binders at that time with my method in it. And it was just loose leaf paper and some cardstock to differentiate from the goals from the months. And I set it up with goal pages, and I was selling them, and I would go to like Office Depot. It was just, I was doing these all on my own to get the method, because the women wanted to know the method from my blog. And I was like, okay, I will sell them this way. They were huge. They were like huge. They were huge planners. I don't know who's ever bought one from me. What? I gotta go back. This is interesting. I had no idea. And I would make, my husband had no idea I was even doing any of this. I wrote a book. I got it up on Kindle. All these things I kind of did, just being home, homeschooling, be with the kids and doing that, just to get off of with my Planner Perfect business. And halfway through, I just felt like I was kind of stalemate for a while. I wanted more, but I kind of felt stalemate. And I told my mom about it, and she had said, everybody in the family wants to know why you're doing Planner Perfect anyways. I was like, what? And so I remember that was at the phase where I was really so deep within her. She would say things to me like that were so, like, they were confusing, I guess is the best way to put it. I mean, I would never even have thought that it was mean back then. I just thought that's confusing, and how do I listen to her? Because she must be right. That's what I was thinking. But that was the one part of me that kept going with my gut. All other aspects of my life, I listened to my mother instead, and I bypassed my gut instinct all the time where God was leading, and I listened to my mom and what she would tell me to do or not do or say or whatever. But with that one, I just ignored that one, and I just kept going. And I'm very glad that I did, because she was like, you should just hang up your hat and call it quits. And your whole family thinks the same way. I was like, wow. No. It was like, that's who part of me. I can't. I mean, it's just, I'm keeping going. And I did. And that was an obstacle, but she did not help in that area. But it helped trigger me to show her different. And I think that's part of my fire underneath it. But anyway, my point in even telling you this is that when we go to it does. I think in anything for all of us, doesn't it? It takes a lot of courage. And that's why I wrote courageous on my lion for March, because it takes a lot of courage to not listen to others and to listen to your own leading, because God directs us completely custom to our divine design. And so it takes courage to listen to that because we are so influenced and conditioned by others. I mean, I could have stopped because of the print company, and that would have been a stop because God led me to these different, to what I wanted to do and all of that. And so it takes courage. It does take courage. And I think that for me, I don't know. I've just, yeah, I forget what my main point was of all this actually. But, you know, the only thing that stops us, the only thing that, oh, good. Oh, hey, Melissa. I'm glad you're on. I haven't had you on with me live in a long time. Um, is that keep going with your dreams. Keep going with what you want to do. With what you're doing, you want it to be like play because that's how much you're doing what you love. When you're a mom, you aren't just a mom, you're more than that. And it's yeah, my honestly, Amy, I mean, that was my whole story, and I will bring out my story more, very, but I will do it very cautiously. You know, my mom is still around, and mwah. So I want to still, I respect her. I still respect her and love her. It's just that there is a boundary there, because she is hurting. I mean, there are that when people abuse, they have been abused and they've never been able to get out of that cycle. And so I want to still respect her and but yet still share parts of my story so that I can help others know that they are enough, if that makes sense. Because I did grow up thinking I was not. And I also grew up thinking, though, that any kind of inner voice or thought that I had was never to be leaned upon. And I suffered for many, many years thinking I was not smart, I was not good enough. Any thought I had was just ridiculous. That and so I never spoke. I was like, why even speak? You know, because if I speak something, it must be not very bright or silly. I just wasn't smart. I just wasn't smart enough. And so I depended greatly on my mom, 100% of the time. Were my kids supposed to go to Awana? Mom, do they? Do I spank him or do I put him in a corner or do I do nothing and just help him? I had to call. My husband was like, what am I, chopped liver? I was like, oh, who cares about you? Only my mom knows answers. It was bad. I mean, it was like, I bypassed my gut. And you know how I know is because my gut, I always knew how to respond to my children, do to my children. But my mom would literally, she lived close to me all the time. She'd literally barge open doors to say, you're doing it wrong. You need to make sure that they behave in this way or they're not allowed to do this and you do it now. And I was like, okay. I mean, it was, whoa, I wish I could talk to that Jenny because you can stand up for yourself. And I was afraid. The fear I had from my mom was insane. I was afraid to tell my mom that I was pregnant with my fifth baby. I had to have a friend tell her because my mom told me that I should only have four. And even then was pushing it. She's like, no, you tell John to get a vasectomy now. And I was like, oh, okay. And it was weird because my husband and I did have, thank you. I'm still a work in progress, as we all are. And you know who really, but again, my mom, it was funny because my mom was so intrusive in my marriage, it caused marriage problems. And so that was a cycle. And so then because we had some marriage problems, then she said, well, you should only have 3 kids. And I was like, okay, well, then when I got pregnant with my fourth, she's like, okay, now you're done. Okay. And so my mom was just, and so I had to tell someone, and then my mom was like, okay, you can have 5. And I was okay with this, looking back, my husband's like, I was never okay with this. Okay. Yeah, it was bad. And my dad was almost non-existent. He was like he just was like, he was not even there. He was just like never there. And when, and if he ever got pushed to a situation where he was, if I didn't behave properly though, in his eyes, if I didn't act childlike around him, like, hi dad, what would you like to drink? If I didn't act childlike and babyish, if I talked like an adult, he'd be like, who do you think you are? That's what he would do. Both my parents would always push me back into my place. Who do you think you are? You're not an adult. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't even know how to live. You need us to tell you what to do. But my dad remained very quiet until my relationship to him, which basically was nothing. He's never hugged me. He's never been there for me. He never taught me anything. He just was in the background. That's basically what he was. And as an adult, he's loving. He can be very loving. So this is where it can get confusing. You get confused and you're like, well, he spoke to me kindly, so he must be a good dad because he was kind. And my mom, she would say things like, there's a billion things, but she'd say, or I would paint for her. She's like, listen, it's really good and all, but if you could take this painting back and fix it, because her hands look funny, this hand. And actually on the cover of one of my courses where it says enough with the girl, that was the girl she kept telling me to repaint. It's not good enough. I can't put, and then she ended up giving it back to me. She's like, here, you can have it. With my painting, she's given away almost all my artwork, if that tells you anything. So, but I just remember after she would do something like that, she'd like, you are so great. You're so great. So you get confused. And I think the confusion is where the huge problem lies. If someone stays mean enough, you get it. You're like, you know what? Bye-bye. But no, especially when it's your parents and then they say something that is mean or do things to you that demeans you, and then they turn around and then love you, now you're confused. Now it's a whole other ball game. So that's the entanglement I needed to get out of. And it's just one of those things. It did. It taught me so much. Honestly, I had to go through that. I just did. Do you customize the color of your painting? Yes, love you and insult you. It's just like, let me see. I didn't see, do you customize the color of your painting of the ladies to be a caramel color? I do have one. I don't know if I have a caramel girl. I've got a black girl and she's gorgeous, but I know what you mean. I think I've got a caramely one. Also too, I don't know if you girls know this, but I am open for custom work. I don't have a lot of time to do custom and it will cost a little bit more, but I can customize a painting for you, but you just have to push the custom button and tell me what you'd like. And we can see if I can indeed do that for you. So also too, there is a way to do that. My son, the thing about Taylor, who's also an artist, is he knows how to use Photoshop to actually change the color of people on there. And I'm like, Taylor, help. So I may be able to even change the color of one of my girls to just change the color. So if you can tell me what girl you like of the girls that I have, I think I can do that. So do let me know, because I think I can do it without having to even paint something different. Taylor does it all the time. He's the one who went to college for that. And so he just learned on his own. So yeah, let me know for sure. So part of the journey is really amazing. And then let me tell you about Blaine, is that children do teach us a lot as well. And I will have to say, part of my journey, I think with Blaine, he's significant to me because number one, he's my 8th. And I think it's crescendo to the point where I think I finally have really, because of the awakening of understanding who I am and getting rid of a lot of roadblocks and things that don't serve me, I've been taught a lot and was able to hear God more and was able to really and I was able to listen and actually lean in this time instead of being like, oh, and shut it down. That was my biggest problem. I heard God, but I shut him down. So, but with Blaine, it's kind of like, after he lost his hair, and after then I noticed again another one of my sons had, yes, you can change the color in Photoshop. My son knows how to do it. So yeah, tell me which girl you want. And but it was more like I really kind of learned a lot about, because every single one of my children had something that was happening within them. I had mood disorders. One was on Prozac because I had no idea what to do. He was so angry. I was just this 20-year-old mom who's like, and so, you know, I put him on, he was only on it for 6 months, and I took him off because I didn't like the fact he was on a drug. And I've had anger problems with boys. I've had anxiety in daughters. I've had alopecia at age 2. I've had teeth problems in children. Now I've got hair loss and OCD. I've had tics in children. And I was like, surely I am in some sort of circus and I'm going to wake up out of this nightmare, this perpetual nightmare. So anyway, I all of a sudden was connecting these dots where I was given an antibiotic. I told you this before, and I hope I'm not boring you, but I'm given an antibiotic with every delivery. And that changes their microbiome. And I never took a probiotic afterwards because I didn't know. And I never gave them a probiotic because I did not know. And it has a lot to do with the gut health. And I just feel really empowered at this point because of the effect. What Blaine has OCD. He has it really, 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 really bad. And I don't want to label him because he is made in God's image and he's a beautiful boy. But I feel like I have really been able to help him. I've done some EFT on him, and he almost becomes limp. He does become limp when I do EFT. When he's going through an episode, a lot of times with my other sons, what I would do is I would be reactive. And I was like, oh my God, just pick out a shirt, quit washing your hands 100 times. And why are you so angry? Instead of reacting, I've learned to not react. And I've learned that through the last few kids, but yet I'm continually challenged. So then it's OCD real bad. Like Blaine, if someone touches him, he's got to change his clothes. He can't wear that shirt anymore now because you've touched him. It's got germs. He can't do it. And so he'll wash his hands like he's a surgeon. Like he's like... I guess that's good now with the virus going on, right? But he's just like, I'm like, why are we scrubbing up like you're going to do open heart surgery? What's happening right now? So now, though, what I do, and I've just been led to certain things, and I've done EFT through my anxious children, and it's completely changed their lives, and it's been completely better. But now I have Blaine on probiotics for children, and it's a special, because with what I'm learning is that with gut health problems, it'll cause a lot of autoimmune disease, obviously teeth problems, and a lot of other mood disorders, including autism on the spectrum in children because of their gut biome. So cesarean children are extremely at risk, just like mine were given up probiotics. They've got to go through the birthing canal to receive all of that healthy bacteria for their guts and things like that. Now, even though I was a nurser I've been nursing for 25 years straight, I also wasn't as health conscious as I am now, and I never took a probiotic to even heal my own gut, and I had my own problems. So with all those kids I had and all those antibiotics I had, no wonder why I had different ailments I even had, or uveitis. I developed an autoimmune disease after 3 kids in, and I was like, so I'm connecting it to gut health so much. And mind you, here's the big kicker is that when I put Blaine on probiotics, I had taken him off of it for a little bit. But before I did, I noticed his mood was so joyful and he had no OCD symptoms. And still no hair, but he was really happy. And I thought, I'm going to give his gut a break. Maybe you need to give it a break. I had no idea. But when I did that, his mood came back. And he was, again, washing his hands. And I was like, ooh, dot connector. So I was like, I got to get him back on probiotics. And through EFT, what I'll do is when he starts to get an episode, I don't react. Instead, I hug him and calm him down first. Then I give him EFT, telling him to love himself because he's really at a pull against himself, which is so hard to see and witness because his heart, I truly believe that God, who was within us, his heart is telling him he's okay, but his mind is telling him he's not. And so he's just bonkers. He doesn't want to feel this way. He doesn't want to freak out over not pairing, having pants that don't feel funny. I mean, he doesn't want to feel that way. So it's like a train wreck. Exactly. And so God is saying, you are okay, you are whole, you're made in my image, and you're perfect. And I think for me, and I read from Florence Scovel Shinn. I don't know if anyone's heard this, but I've heard this from other really well-known Bruce Lipton, who is, I don't know his proper title of what he does, but he has several books out, and I've mentioned him several times in Project Me. But they talk about epigenetics and things like that. But the whole point is in how we're made, and that but we are made in God's image and we are perfect. Everything else is truly an illusion. It's things that we have put on ourselves that creates our bodies not to flow and function and heal properly. And I believe that. And when it comes to children, I mentioned this in one of my videos, which is so spot on. And listen, if I don't get guilty, you shouldn't either. But truly, children get sick from their own mothers. And I say that in a way, our thoughts and feelings and our fears do influence our children, period. And if I trace back and look at what I used to say, what I used to feel, and what I used to think, it was wrought in fear. I was all fear. That's all. It was fear-based in my 20s and 30s. And when it came to my children and continually having children with problems, all I did was fear. And not being as completely spiritually far along as I am now, would give God my burden, and then the next minute I was already afraid again because my son would come with me with tooth pain, or my daughter's hair would be falling out, and I was like, I'm still stuck. I didn't even know where to turn, left, right, And so it was just one of those things that I've come into such an awakening experience to understand that, number one, what I've learned is that when Blaine does act this way, instead of me thinking that something is wrong with him, I now think and know that nothing is, that he is perfect just the way he is. That's brought a lot of peace to him. And, he immediately starts to calm down, because what's hard is that even siblings will be like, what the heck? You feel like something's wrong with you. And boy, that really gets kids, no matter if they have any kind of what's going on, if they feel like something's wrong with them, it only exasperates the problem. And anyway, but so I really just have learned to me thinking correctly. And boy, talk about, my children having problems and how it's helping me. It's an inner work. Everything that goes on in our lives is always an inner work. Because if you want to know what's going on with you and where you're at to where you want to be, all you got to do is look at your life. And I look at it all right, and I'm like, well, God, what is it? What is it? What have I done? It's not hard to trace. It's just not hard to trace. And I was like, I do look at Blaine thinking something's wrong with him. Something's wrong with him. So I've been saying that about my kids for as long as I've had kids. Something's wrong. Something's wrong with them. Something's horribly wrong, And I like to change that verbiage and that thought to, there's nothing wrong with them. Okay? There's nothing wrong with them. If they're made by God and they're made in God's image, then nothing is wrong with them. And they need to know that. Everything else will just heal itself from that point. So you've got to go back to that point and be like, nothing is wrong with them. Everything is going to be okay. And then we can take steps to move them out of that space. And that's the journey. And it doesn't have to take long. It takes as long as you need to get rid of things yourself. But even with the explaining things to Blaine, saying, when I say, there is nothing wrong. And when I do EFT, it's like, I don't like pants to feel this way, and I feel funny, and it makes me feel funny, but I completely love and accept myself. I mean, he was crying just over those words. So it's going through that process of teaching him to know that he is okay. Even though it seems like things aren't okay, he's still okay. And he's perfect just the way he is, even if he doesn't seem to be perfect, right? And that's where I think that's where God wants to lead us, that we're okay. No matter what the circumstances are, no matter if we're flat broke or if we don't have anything going for us health wise, or relationships with our children are in the dumps right now, it doesn't matter how they are right now, they will be just fine. They will be just fine. And it's all a matter of changing the shift of how we think about the things that are happening. And our senses and our conscious mind are only observing. That's what they're doing, is they're observing and they're giving us feedback. It's up to us to be able to either accept it or reject that. And it's important in these, for me, when I see anyone suffer like this, I reject the thought that my mind is trying to tell me that something is wrong with him. That he is okay. He is made in God's image, and his body can heal, his mind can heal and get untripped. And it's a process for both of us. And me going through him with his mind, the relief he had, he was completely humped like this. And then I made him hug me. It was easy for him to do, but that was part of our process, our healing of what I was doing through his mind. And after that, he stood quietly and waited for his one pair of pants out of 100 to be done, because he can only wear one pair that doesn't bug him. And he sat there and waited, but he was calm. And I said, this is progress. This is progress. I mean, you're not hurting your heart. I'll always tell him, you get your heart all beating so fast. It's not good for your heart. Breathe, breathe, breathe. Everything's going to be okay. So, basically it's a full-time job, but it doesn't have to be, not always. And that's a time to be grateful. That's a time to be grateful. And I will definitely see my answered prayer. Definitely. And I do believe this, that with all of my children, they've outgrown it. They've outgrown all of it. They don't have tics. They don't have anger problems. They are beautiful, sweet children as God has created them to be. And I never gave them a probiotic. And so I do believe that your gut biome does heal itself through time. It took a lot of time, okay? And I definitely was not in a position to know any better of how to help that progression or that, yeah. And, but I don't fault myself for that. And I've truly forgiven myself for all of that. For what you don't know, you can't even be responsible for. But it's definitely part of my journey, because I've helped I grew up in terms of not being knee-jerk with Brock, because Brock came into the world with his fist like this, like, I will show every single one of you how angry I am. Okay, so he was one, and then he had rotten teeth to boot. And so I learned to not react toward his anger as a parent with him. It started with him. With his teeth, I feared my way through it, and then I got a miracle. And then I thought, okay, Blaine's going to be different. Oh no, he was no different. He was like, game on. Game on. So he was angry, and then it developed into OCD and anger. And that's when I was like, oh, something's wrong, something's wrong. But then through my awakening and then God just leads, and I'm listening. And so it's amazing how different roadblocks can stop you from listening. It's a good idea. Hi there, everyone. I'm a little bit late. I apologize. So I'm